Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Chad Himes, I'm fantastic.
You know, Bob, usually when they hear me make the introduction and introduce just you and notice the third guy did not join us today, they usually are expecting the voice, though, of someone to come along as you and I are probably getting into an interview. Yet that's not the case today, is it?
No, we're going to talk about food. I'm hungry. Are you
food.
hungry?
All right, so Bob wants to talk about food, but not specifically food, Bob.
Okay.
We're going to talk about a guy that everybody that's listening to this podcast knows, who was behind some of the food that everybody on this podcast knows, and probably, I don't want to be positive on this, but probably has tasted his food at some point in their life.
Yeah, I would guess that's a yes.
Okay.
If they haven't,
They're missing out on something,
yeah,
right?
Like, what have you been doing for with your life?
And you'll know who we're talking about possibly really quickly, and then maybe not for a little while, because when we do these look backs at someone's career, Ben just likes to have us do it where we don't give away who the person is. Now,
But we joke with him because we usually title the episodes with the person's name. So, like, I don't know how you got here to listening to this, but there's a high likelihood you know who we're talking about.
yeah,
already.
if you've read the headline of what the episode is, you probably have an idea. But we are talking about a guy, his first name's Harlan, and we're just going to stick with that for right now.
Okay.
Bob, this guy, he was born September 9th, 1890. That's a long time ago.
That was a little bit ago.
A little bit ago, right? I wasn't there at the time. I'm not that old, okay? Let's tell you a little bit about this guy. His mother was a devout Christian and a very strict parent. Now, Bob, his mom always warned him and his siblings for what?
Well, in quotes, the evils of alcohol, tobacco, gambling, and whistling on Sundays. I don't have any, Chad, I went to Vacation Bible School as a young child. I was kind of like, I've read my Bible. I've spent some time in church. I've never heard this one. Whistle. I didn't know you couldn't whistle on Sundays, but man, I'm not going to do that anymore.
You weren't in school on Sunday, so they didn't yell at you for it.
Yeah.
Now, Harlan's father died when he was only 5 years old, and mom got a job at a cannery, and at 5, Harlan was left to look after and cook for his siblings because mom could be gone for days at time for
I can't
work.
even imagine. I have a 5-year-old right now. Like,
Imagine leaving him in charge of his younger sibling.
I mean, he likes to cook me fake stuff on his little stove, his little fake stove, and he likes to bring it out and give it to me. But I would let this kid near like boiling grease or oil. What?
No, not at all. All right, so jumping ahead, by age 10, Harlan was already working as a farmhand in Indiana where he was. And by 1902, that means he's 12, Bob.
Yep.
His mother is on to her third marriage, and the family gets moved. And by 1903, because Harlan had such a poor relationship with his stepfather and poor success at school, algebra is actually the thing he claimed was the issue. He dropped out in 7th grade and went to live and work on a nearby farm.
He's got this is a father dies at 5. He's responsible for taking care of his brothers and sisters. He's working full-time as a farmhand. Like, that's hard work. By 10, multiple marriages from his mom. Like, we'll see this behavior come out later in his life. There's some stuff that this kid's kind of collecting here as a young child that comes out and really presents issues for him over his kind of the arc of his career.
It does, and it's showing a trend. I mean, look how 5, he basically had a job being a nanny, for lack of better term there. By 10, he's a farmhand. By 12, he's now working and living on a farm. At age 13, he takes a job painting horse carriages in Indianapolis. Like, he moves completely away from the family. By 14, he goes even farther to southern Indiana, takes a job again as a farmhand. And now when he's 16, he moves again in Indiana and gets a job as a conductor at a streetcar company that his uncle got him in with. Bob, this guy goes through jobs quickly.
Yeah, he's he had 10 jobs before most of us had one.
Yeah.
Like, by age 16, he had 5 jobs.
Now, I understand it was different back in 1900, yet absolutely, that's a lot. And it didn't stop here, Bob, because he lies on his birth certificate so that he can enlist in the Army in 1906 before he was old enough. He gets discharged honorably less than a year later. He goes to move with his uncle to Alabama and gets a job as a blacksmith's helper working at Southern Railway. Now he keeps going through this railroad thing because 2 months later he moved again.
Job number 6, by the way, at age 16.
You counting those for us? All right.
I am.
He moves again. He's now in Jasper, Alabama, cleaning ash pans when the trains are finished their run. And then he becomes a steam engine stoker.
Oh, that's job 7 and 8.
Okay. By 1909 now, he's doing labor work for Norfolk and Western Railway and finally meets his wife. Very quickly married. I did the math here, Bob. I don't have the dates for everybody. 10 months after marriage, baby 1 shows up. Very quick that we got, could be a reason that they were married early. They had 3 children. He moves the family back to Tennessee and goes to work for another railroad company.
And I lost track. Is jobs 8 or 9? I'm not sure.
Probably more than that. You're right. And I probably didn't even
place.
list all the jobs that I was finding about Harlan here. He loses this job for brawling with a colleague.
This is the first time we see kind of an attitude problem come out of this guy. Probably, created at that young age with just all that. That's a lot to go through as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's the first time we see it. That doesn't mean it was the first time it probably showed up.
Sure.
Right? He moves to go work for Rock Island Railroad, and he actually sends his wife and his children to go live with her parents. And meanwhile, he's studying law through correspondence at the same time. I don't know if I really want a lawyer that's doing it through correspondence personally.
These are different times back then, Chad.
Yes. Okay. I'll give you that. All right. For 3 years, he practices law, Bob. There's another job for you. Okay. He's in Little Rock doing this, and he's able to bring his family back with him. But his short legal career came to an end. You want to guess how, Bob?
He got in a fight.
He got in a fight. But here's the thing. He got in a fight with one of his own clients, which destroyed his reputation because the judge had the check for the settlement made out to Harlan, not directly to the client, and the client thought he should get the money. So, got into a brawl, destroyed his own reputation. After this, he had to move all the way back in with his mother and go back to work for a laborer at the Pennsylvania Railroad.
Oh.
Finally gets out of the railroad, Bob, and starts selling life insurance for Prudential and is fired for...
Shut up.
Insubordination. That's right. The attitude's back. Okay. So off to Louisville, and he becomes a salesman for Mutual Benefit Life of New Jersey.
You know what's interesting here? It's almost like he's like self-sabotaging or something. Like every time he kind of gets like a job that's maybe going to get him a little bit ahead, right? He like does something stupid and he slides back to kind of this, this like manual labor place.
And I want everyone to understand, we're now into 1920. I'll do the math for you. 30 years old. Okay. He now establishes a ferry boat company working on the Ohio River. He raised funding and gets to be a minority shareholder, and the ferry turns out to be a success. He cashed in on his shares and he got $22,000 in 1920.
About his 13th or 14th job. He's finally kind of stepping out to this like entrepreneurial spirit, right? And it ends up kind of having his first like success.
Absolutely. $22,000 he got. That would be like selling out for $335,000-ish today.
Okay, so that's a good little chunk of change, right? He's got some money in his pocket.
So what do most entrepreneurs do when they make some money?
They reinvest it. They double down. They do it, take it into something else.
That's right. He put his money into a company that was making gas lamps, and right after that, electric lamps start selling, and his venture completely collapses. Okay, so he moves again. And this time to Winchester, Kentucky, to become a salesman for the Michelin Tire Company. And he lost that job when the plant closed. But he was asked to run a service station and ran that for 6 years until the Great Depression came along and took it away from him.
Right, so it's 1930. He's now 40 years old. He's lost this service station he'd been running for about 6 years as a result of the Depression in 1929. 1930. And he gets another kind of offer to run a station in Kentucky. North Corbin, Kentucky. We're getting closer, by the way, to the kind of the reveal, right?
Who he is.
He's in Kentucky now, and it's a deal where he's basically not paying a mortgage, or he's given a percentage of the sales back to the guy that owned the business before. So
correct.
But he did something at that station. He took that kind of love of cooking that it started at age 5 when he was having to do it for his siblings, and he started offering food at the gas station.
Correct. And he had a side job while he was living there, Bob. He was delivering babies because he said, quote, there was no one else to do it.
I don't know where North Corbin, Kentucky is, but
And we
That
mean
doesn't
no
shock
offense to
me.
you if you live near North Corbin, Kentucky,
Well, it
and you're
doesn't
listening.
shock me that some small town in Kentucky we've never heard of might need, somebody to deliver babies.
Okay, so Bob, I love this story. Okay,
This
during this time, he's got this service station and he's offering food. Yet there is a competitor who also has a service station, and this competitor again and again would paint over Harland's sign that he would have up on the highway advertising, turn right here to get to my place. The guy would go and he would turn it to a left to his place or whatever it was, right? So they went out to the sign. Harland went out there and he had some of these Shell people work for Shell Oil, right? The gas, go with him because this guy was apparently painting the sign as this was happening.
Okay.
And they went out there and they caught him painting the sign and a shootout began. Okay.
Harland don't mess around.
No, he does not mess around. He put a shot out there and his competitor turns around and shoots back and actually kills the Shell employee. Goes to jail for 14 years for murder.
Bad luck for the Shell employee. Good luck for Harland because his competition is now out of business.
That's right. Competition went to jail, and this worked really well for him because his business exploded. He had no more competition in the area. So now, 1939 comes along. He acquires a motel in Asheville, North Carolina. Okay. 3 months later, his original location burns to the ground, but he rebuilds it with a motel and a restaurant because of that love of cooking. That's right. Now 1941 comes along. World War II is there. Gas gets rationed. Tourism dries up. He had to close the hotel.
So it's 1942. This guy is now 52 years old.
Yep.
He's had a massive series of just
Failures.
First off, just jobs,
Yes.
right? But then it just once he gets that first little taste of success, after that, it's just failure after failure after failure after failure.
Yes.
There's probably 4 different times where he could have just packed it up and been like, I don't know, I'm just going to go back and work on the farm or something, right?
Absolutely. Right. 42, he sells the business in Asheville. 47, so now Bob, he's 57 years old. He divorces his wife, who apparently they did not have a wonderful relationship. And 2 years after that, marries his longtime mistress, which might explain why he didn't have a wonderful marriage, marries his longtime mistress. So, Bob, before we dive into the turn for this guy, because we're not going to just sit here and talk about Harland, who's had failure after failure after failure, if there isn't something waiting at the end.
Right.
Bob, one of the quotes that this man is attributed to is,
one has to remember that every failure can be a stepping stone to something better.
okay, and this guy's had a lot of failures, so he's got a long path of stepping stones. Bob, what lessons are you already learning listening to Harland just get to his mid to late 50s with all of this going on?
Yeah, this dude needs to get his emotions in check. I don't know what happens on the other side of this story. I mean, I kind of do, but he needs to get his emotions in check. There's a number of times he's sabotaging kind of the trajectory of his career because he let his emotions get out of control, kind of in that work environment, whether it was with his client, whether it was in a freaking pistol shootout with his competitor.
Yep.
In the reality is he got lucky in that pistol shootout. He could have been the one that ended up in jail. So that's maybe the first lesson is that his emotions were derailing him. I'm assuming at some point he gets those under control, but
well, I'm gonna ruin the ending for you. He never does.
Oh.
And you'll see signs of that one that you're right. He needed to learn that lesson. And we hope everybody out there learns that lesson of keeping your emotions in control. He never did, and it's going to bite him in the ass a bunch of times.
Maybe one of the other would be this idea that he's 57. We haven't even gotten to his success.
Correct.
Which is
hopeful for me.
Yeah, sure. Hopeful for a lot of us, that you can have this massive success later in life. I heard a statistic the other day that the average millionaire got to $1 million of net worth at age 49.
Okay.
Which is, I think you're just past that, right? I'm coming
50s
up on
in the
that.
very, very near future.
It just, we think oh my gosh, I'm behind.
Right.
I'm behind friggin' Zuckerberg. I'm behind these guys, right? They're in a different class, right? But his story gives me hope that at 57, this guy is still on the verge of his big breakthrough. Gets it eventually, right? We'll get to that, but
yep.
I guess that would be another one for me that don't give up, right?
Okay.
And he didn't, right? He didn't let failure stop him any of the 12 different ways he failed.
No, he did not. And we don't want you to let failure stop you. Here's the thing. By the end of this next kind of few breaths of conversation, you should have figured out who we're talking about if you haven't read the title again, unless Dave titled this one in some fun, tricky way. In 1940, he's 50 years old, running that service station with the restaurant attached to it, and he comes out with his, quote, secret recipe. Okay. Now, Bob, you might know how many herbs and spices are in this secret recipe.
You know what? Right when you said that, I knew you were going to ask me. 12?
It's 11.
11.
It's 11 herbs and spices that to this day, nobody knows what they are, except supposedly the company, yet rumor has it they've changed it and are not actually following the original secret recipe.
That's because later they can come back out with the original version secret recipe.
That's right. That's a marketing ploy, the whole thing, right? So the secret recipe with 11 herbs and spices for his chicken.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Harland didn't want to deep fry because he believed that when you deep fry chicken, it dries out the chicken, not as good. So he figured that he used a pressure fryer instead of pan frying, because pan frying took over a half hour, and here he was at a service station road stop. He couldn't have them sitting there that long waiting. He could make more chicken if he used this pressure fryer system that he had to get people moving. Now, he had a lot of success at his local restaurant. What state was that in, Bob, again? Kentucky. And he was...
Wait a minute. Kentucky chicken?
Wait a minute. So he was recommissioned as a Kentucky Colonel, purely an honorary title. Now, Bob, if you started to put together some of these words, you should be figuring out what's coming. Yet in 1952, Harland finally found somebody after apparently, the story says 1,009 times. He tried to find somebody who would franchise his secret recipe.
Take his concept and go open it up somewhere else.
Correct. The story, I couldn't find proof to it. I didn't get a list of the 1,008 that said no or whatever, but he finally got to a guy named Pete Harmon in South Salt Lake, Utah.
That's crazy. That means he asked everybody that was selling chicken between Kentucky and South Lake, Utah, right?
Right. And Pete said in the first year, his business tripled, and there was a 75% increase in the sale of fried chicken thanks to using Harland's secret recipe. So Pete wanted to market it. Pete wanted to put a gigantic sign in front of his restaurant to promote that he had something that was different, something that was unique, something that had that home-cooked Southern hospitality feel. And he decided to call it, Bob, what did the sign say? What did he call this thing he was selling?
If you haven't figured this out at this point, ladies and gentlemen, where have you been? What are you doing? Are you listening? Hello, wake up. Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yes, Kentucky Fried Chicken was launched then. Now, here's the thing. Colonel Sanders, right? He was a colonel. He becomes the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And it didn't stop there. He went door to door. He continued to go door to door to restaurants across the country, and he would just cook for everybody there. He would just say to the owner of the restaurant, would it be okay if I just set up my stuff and cooked for all your people? And he would give away free chicken dinners at these restaurants. And what would happen is the owners would hear from their patrons how amazing it was and they wanted to come back, that they would franchise. And what that meant to Harland at the time was he would sell them his seasoning, his 11 herbs and spices mix, and they paid him 4 cents per chicken sold moving forward, and the whole thing was done on a handshake. That's a different world back then.
Yeah.
Okay. In 1952, Bob, how old is he? You're the math guy for me.
62.
He's finally getting his break.
Wow.
62 before Colonel Sanders founded Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay?
Crazy.
Company got bigger and bigger and bigger. Harland runs the company. His wife, Claudia, mixes and ships all the spices. Now, Bob, KFC goes on to be one of the first fast food chains to go international. It doesn't sound international, yet the first place they went was...
Oh, Canada.
There you go. They went north of the border. Yes, it's international. Then they went into the UK, Mexico, and Jamaica, all within 3 years. Okay? He patents his pressure cooking method in 62. He patents the famous trademark expression. Bob, do you remember it?
Oh, it's finger looking good, Chad.
It's finger looking good in 63. And that came by accident. It was actually during a TV spot where one of the managers was seen eating chicken over the shoulder of somebody, and he licked his fingers, and people were complaining how disgusting it was that the man licked his fingers on TV like that after eating.
He had to. It's finger licking good.
And that's what came out with the saying, it's finger licking good. Right.
That's awesome.
Now, rapid expansion happened. 600 locations before you know it. By 1964, he's now how old?
73, 4, somewhere in that range.
Yep, 73, and he sells KFC for $2 million. Bob, that would be 17.5 million-ish in today's world.
It's crazy. That doesn't seem like that much, right? But I mean, I guess like the KFC we know would go on after that and kind of take over, right? Like kind of be this dominant frame. But he had 600 locations, like
600 plus locations that he couldn't handle. He sold it cheap.
Yeah.
He could have gotten a lot more for it back even in 1964. And this is one of those things with his emotions in check that we're going to see show up because of that. He kept all the Canadian franchises to himself. Smart man. That's how I always knew the Colonel, because I was growing up in Canada at this age. It was still his that he was running. And he stayed on as the brand ambassador. He traveled over 200,000 miles a year doing appearances and commercials for them. And for 20 years, he was never seen in public in anything other than his Colonel uniform that we all know him for. You can close your eyes and probably picture Colonel Sanders right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bob, have you ever eaten at a fast food restaurant?
Yeah.
Threw him off with an easy question on that one, right?
like in the last week, or what are you talking about?
And before
Absolutely.
we even started recording this, we were talking about certain things we loved at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yeah. Your favorite was?
I like the biscuits. Big fan of their biscuits. But look, I like their mashed potatoes and gravy. But then when we were doing the research, I realized it's not the gravy that Colonel Sanders used to have.
Not at all.
Right? In fact,
no.
He thought their gravy was disgusting. What it's turned into over the years.
That's right. Quote, Bob. What did he say? Quote when we were doing the research on this about the gravy.
My God, that gravy is horrible. He goes on to say they buy tap water for 15 to 20 cents 1,000 gallons, and then they mix it in with flour and starch, and they end up with pure wallpaper paste. You want to know how I know that? Because I've watched my mother make wallpaper paste before.
It's just hilarious, right? But they did such a poor job in Colonel Sanders' mind of keeping up the quality. I love, and I'm old enough to remember it, and I think you remembered it this way, was the old green mushy coleslaw that they had.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most disgusting thing to like look at and go, I'm going to eat that, but it was delicious. Then they changed the whole recipes. Okay, so while Harland Sanders was the public face of the company, he was so angry at the company and the quality of the food that he opened a restaurant called the Colonel's Ladies Dinner House. And he was opening a restaurant with his wife in Shelbyville, Kentucky, and was selling Kentucky Fried Chicken done the original recipe way, the way he believed it should still be done. And KFC sued Colonel Sanders. But Colonel Sanders turned right around and sued them for $122 million.
Because changing the recipe.
He was pissed that they changed the recipe, settled out of court, he got another $1 million, and he got a chance to give cooking lessons to the executives, and he promised to stop criticizing their food in public. Bob, this guy was openly critical of what Kentucky Fried Chicken became because he worked so hard to build it to what it is and just couldn't let go and leave it to other people.
I didn't get a chance to eat chicken straight from the Colonel, so I don't know what their chicken was like, when he ultimately sold it, and then what they turned it. I like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
If you're gonna have fried chicken, right? It's good fried chicken.
I'll still eat there. Like Dave, our audio guy, Dave, he was saying last time he went there, they didn't have buckets anymore. I found that hard to believe. Like they could not have gotten rid of the bucket of fried chicken.
Wait, someone tell us. Someone let us know. Do they have the bucket where you are still, or is the bucket
I'm going to do some
truly
research
gone?
tonight. I'm going to stop by a Kentucky Fried Chicken on my way home. Strictly for research purposes, Chad.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'll grab a couple pieces just for research.
I'm sure. I believe if they got rid of the bucket, it was probably some environmental thing that the buckets aren't biodegradable. That's all it is. But you're right. Okay, now this was a guy who was generous to a fault as well. He was such a good person. He created the Colonel Harland Sanders Charitable Organization and the wing of the Mississauga Hospital. I actually know how to say that because it's a Canadian place. The Mississauga Hospital for Women and Children's Care is actually named the Colonel Harland Sanders Family Care Center because of it. And he gave recently over $500,000 to other Canadian charities. And he's made sizable donations to many, many, many children's hospitals because the man actually cares about other people.
I like his quote about kind of that philanthropy at the end, towards the end of his life. What did he say about that?
There's no reason to be the richest man in the cemetery. You can't do business from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one right there. Okay, Bob. So let's wrap up his life and then let's talk about him a little bit. Colonel Sanders was diagnosed with acute leukemia in June of 1980 and was active until a month before his death in December. He was still making appearances dressed as the Colonel in front of crowds, and then died of pneumonia December of 1980 at the age of
90 years old. Wow. I mean, that's an amazing life. To live that, to be born in 1890 and live until 1980, like, wow.
There's something cool in the numbers being transposed there, right? And not only that, Bob, if you do the math, and you're our math guy, if he lived to the age of 90 and we figured out he was in his 60s when he finally made Kentucky, 2/3 of his life were failure after failure after failure after failure for this last 1/3 that he will be remembered forever for, even generations from now when they don't know who the Colonel actually was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, he was buried in his white suit and black string tie. Okay.
By the time he died, they'd have what, 6,000 Kentucky KFC. They changed the name at some point too, right? I remember that.
Pepsi took over, cleaned it up with the whole health thing. They called it KFC because they didn't want to say fried anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's why they didn't want to. They didn't. Us health conscious people.
Sure. Chad wouldn't go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, but he'll drop by a KFC.
But I go to KFC. Sure.
They tricked him.
What were they? They were selling how much a year, Bob?
They were doing $2 billion in annual sales.
Yeah.
Selling a lot of chicken.
And that's when he died. That's like $6+ billion today or something like that they're doing. I mean, it's amazing. So, Bob, tell me, what do you take away from the life of Colonel Harland Sanders?
I'd go back to what I took out of his failures. Like, man, you can look. My mom she's had a series of successful career things, and she started a new career at 58 or 59 years old. She's killing it. She's crushing it. She's had 5 years. This an amazing. Like, we can do things later in life. Like, we can have really big changes. We could have this guy. I was 57. He was when he finally broke through. To me, that is makes me feel good, Chad, because I'm getting up there a little bit, right? So it's
you can see 50. It's in the near future.
Yeah,
right?
It is. It's in the near future, and so it's motivational to me to know that we can still have massive impact later in life.
Absolutely. I think we probably are better for it later in life because when we're young, we just either don't appreciate what we have, or like Harland showed a lot of times, we let emotion get in the way, screw things up for us. We become older. We kind of sort of.
You know what Harland did? Let's go back to that kind of the emotion thing. Because when I had said, I hope he gets this under control later, you were like, well, not really. But it seems like he was able to harness it a little better, right? That emotion. Because he was so mad that when they took it over, they changed things. But he harnessed that into a lawsuit that ended up getting him an extra $1 million, right? Which is 50% of what he even sold it for to begin with.
Yep.
So, he didn't walk into their offices with a pistol and start shooting into the ceiling or anything, right?
It is good he did not do that.
Right. But, he might have done that in his 20s.
That's a true
He was
statement.
able over time to maybe harness those emotions a little bit more. He still used them to kind of fuel him, right? He was still pissed that they'd done it and he was going to, kind of take his revenge. He just didn't do it with a pistol.
Bob, I want to share with you some of the quotes that Harland is known for, maybe get your take on some of these quotes. And Bob hasn't seen these before I'm about to say them to him. I'm going to just throw them at him. So one of the things that Colonel Sanders is known for saying is, don't be against things so much as for things. What do you take from that quote from him?
Hallelujah. It's really easy to be against things. I try to do this with my kids all the time, when they'll say, well, I don't want to do it that way. And I'll say, you know what, that's fine. How do you want to do it? right? It's really easy to say, I don't want that way. I don't like it that way. I don't like that. Like, what do you like? How do you want it? So yeah, and I think that is like, if we could always be about something instead of being against something, I feel like the person that's always against something in my head, they're like it's really easy to identify problems. What's really hard are solutions, right? So when you're for something, that to me, that's like you're for this solution to that thing. You're not just against the problem that thing represents.
That's great. I love that takeaway. Bob, I know you're over there and you're typing away as we're talking here, and you're Googling some quotes from Colonel Sanders as well. What's one that jumped out at you as you were running through some quotes out there?
I like there's a couple that I'd pulled up here. No hours, nor amount of labor, nor amount of money would deter me from giving the best that there was in me. Like, he just worked hard. I tie this back to his that chicken recipe. Like, for him, that was ultimately his thing. Like, he was not going to let the money, like, he got this $2 million and they thought he was going to ride off into the sunset. And he's like, nope, that is not going to detour from giving like the best. Like, I gave you guys the best of me, this recipe. You gave me $2 million. You thought I was going to go away. No, I'm going to sit here and make sure that recipe like is represented.
Yeah.
Well, I love that quote from him.
Yeah, there is a rumor about the recipe, as I was hinting at earlier, that says that the company has changed it, apparently, but keeps the secret recipe under lock and key, that nobody actually knows what it is, so nobody can prove whether it's been changed or not. And over the years, the only 2 of the 11 herbs and spices that Colonel Sanders ever gave away were salt and pepper. But he said all the other ones are in your kitchen. It's just a matter of maybe the mixing.
Even if you knew what the 11 were, then you got to get the ratios on them.
Right, absolutely. Here's a quote that I pulled up. I really love this one that he said. It was, hard work beats all the tonics and vitamins in the world. And coming from a guy who's health focused and all that stuff, I take my vitamins every day, right? I don't drink tonics or anything like that, but hard work's going to beat everything.
I love tonics. Like, you can tell this quote came from like the 20s or something.
Yeah,
like the 30s.
Absolutely.
But you like, if all you did, Chad, was just sit on your couch and drink tonics and eat vitamins, like, you're not going to be healthy.
Correct.
You have to have the hard work in there, right?
Yep.
That's a good one.
It's going to happen. All right, Bob. So takeaways from the ultimate overview of, now everybody knows we've been talking about Colonel Harland Sanders, the creator of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
This guy, never too late. We don't care how many times you've tried and failed. You can still get up and do it again. And look, if you're somebody that's bounced around in your career and you're getting later in your career, you feel like you're getting later, it's okay, right? Like, this guy he proves to us that we can bounce around, and we if we just keep working hard, keep doing it, like, ultimately we'll find our breakthrough.
All right. So before I leave you with a quote from Colonel Sanders to sum this all up, we hope you'll come join us, facebook.com/group/win-make-give, where we can share with you even more. We can have the conversation after these episodes. Maybe you can share with us some of your favorite Colonel Sanders and Kentucky Fried Chicken stories. Someone can tell us whether the bucket really is still out there where they live, or if they have one in their closet, or whatever it might be. Before we wrap this up, I'm going to leave it with the words of Colonel Sanders when he said, "The hard way builds solidity." Fix that, Dave. The hard way builds solidly a foundation of confidence that cannot be swept away. The hard way builds solidly a foundation of confidence that cannot be swept away. And I just went through the hard way to say that quote because I know Dave didn't go back and fix that. I know he left me out there to hang. And that's okay. I can take it because I now have a foundation of confidence that cannot be swept away.
Wait, did you just tell Dave to leave your little...
I know he's going to leave it anyway, so I might as well just go grab that. I knew he wasn't going to take it out for me. Folks, until our next episode, remember, get out there, and as always, do good.